The sky was heavy with dark clouds, and the cold wind moved across the broken stones. The place was called the Graveyard of the Forgotten, a vast field where unwanted aliens were left behind. Darren Maddox tightened his jacket and kept moving forward, his boots crunching against the cracked ground. He wasn't like the others who feared this place. Stories said it was cursed, filled with sadness and whispers of the lost, but Darren didn't believe in ghost tales. He believed in what he could see and feel. His flashlight cut through the darkness, passing over twisted silver monuments and sunken graves that looked like open mouths frozen in silent screams. Most avoided this place, calling it a land of sorrow. But Darren wasn't here for adventure or curiosity. He was searching for something he couldn't name, something he needed to find. A soft sound made him stop. It was barely louder than the whispering wind, but it was there, a weak, broken noise. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't the wind. It was something alive. Holding his breath, Darren moved toward the sound, careful not to slip on the loose stones. Behind a shattered pillar, half buried under dried leaves and dust, he found her. A girl. Not human. An alien. She lay twisted on the ground, her skin glowing faintly under the flashlight's beam like pale silver glass. Her hair, long and tangled with the graveyard's debris, shone like fallen starlight. She tried to move, but only a small tremble ran through her body. Her arms and legs remained still, useless. Darren dropped to his knees beside her. His heart thudded painfully in his chest. "Hey," he said softly, afraid to scare her. Her eyelids fluttered open. Huge violet eyes stared up at him, filled with terror, sorrow, and something worse. A deep, hopeless despair. Her lips moved, trying to speak, but it was only a whisper. "Save me." The words broke something inside Darren. Without thinking, he shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around her fragile body. He lifted her into his arms carefully, feeling how frighteningly light she was. She was like a broken bird, left to die in a place where no one would hear her cry. As he carried her away from the graveyard, he felt her tiny breaths against his chest, weak but still there. He didn't know who she was or why she had been abandoned, but none of that mattered. He had found her, and he was not going to leave her behind. Darren moved quickly, his heart pounding harder with every step. The girl in his arms was colder than the night air itself. Her silver skin, once probably glowing with life, now looked so fragile, so breakable. He wrapped her tighter in his jacket, whispering softly even though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "You're going to be okay. I've got you now. You're safe." His small house wasn't far, a little cottage at the edge of the woods, built by his own hands. He hurried through the crooked trees, pushing past the branches that clawed at him. The night seemed to watch him, the stars blinking behind thick clouds, as if holding their breath. When he finally pushed open the door, the warmth inside hit him. He laid her carefully on the couch, grabbing blankets and wrapping her up like a delicate treasure. His hands shook as he touched her, not from fear, but from something deeper, a need to protect her. He lit the fireplace quickly, the crackle of the flames filling the silence. The light made her features clearer. She was breathtaking, even in her broken state. Her delicate cheekbones, her small nose, her soft lips that looked almost like they had been crafted by an artist who loved every line. She moaned softly, her eyelids fluttering. Darren knelt beside her. "Can you hear me?" he asked, voice low, kind. Her eyes opened a little, those beautiful violet orbs glistening with tears. She tried to speak again, but only a small choked sound came out. "Don't strain yourself," he said gently. "You're safe here. Rest." She stared at him with such intensity, as if trying to memorize his face, as if he was her last hope in a world that had turned cruel. He wet a cloth and gently wiped the dust and dirt from her face, his touch careful, respectful. Her body was, still, unresponsive below the shoulders. She was truly paralyzed. Anger burned in Darren's chest. Who would leave her like this? Who could be so heartless? As he cleaned her skin, he noticed something. A small crest burned into her collarbone, hidden beneath layers of grime. It was shaped like a twisted flower, beautiful, but sharp. It meant something, but he had no idea what. Her lips parted slightly. "Name," she whispered. He leaned closer. "Your name? You want to tell me?" She gave the faintest nod. "To Tevra," she breathed. "Tevra," he repeated, letting the name settle in his heart. It sounded like a song, sad and sweet. "I'm Darren," he said, offering a small smile. "You're safe now, Tevra. I promise you that." A single tear slipped from the corner of her eye, and Darren wiped it away with the softest touch. That night, he sat by her side, feeding her sips of water, keeping the fire alive, speaking softly even when she drifted in and out of sleep. He didn't leave her for even a second. The world outside could be cruel and cold. But here, in this little house, a promise was born, a silent vow he made in his heart. No matter who had abandoned her, no matter what she was, he would be the one who stayed. Morning crept slowly across the sky, washing the room in soft gold light. Darren stretched his stiff arms, never once taking his eyes off Tevra. She was still asleep, her breathing shallow but steady. The fire had burned low, but he didn't dare move too far. He made a quiet breakfast, bread and soup, simple but warm, and brought it to her. Tevra's eyes fluttered open as he approached, her gaze heavy with exhaustion. "Good morning," Darren said gently, sitting beside her. "I made some food. You need your strength." She tried to move her arms, but they barely twitched. Her mouth formed a small frown, frustration clear on her face. Hey, Darren said quickly, setting the bowl down and taking her hand, cold and unmoving, into his. "You're not alone anymore. I'll help you." Carefully, he fed her tiny spoonfuls, waiting between each one to make sure she could swallow. She ate slowly, her cheeks coloring faintly from the closeness. Every now and then, her fingers would try to move, just a small twitch. "You're a fighter," he said with a smile. "I can see it in your eyes." When she had eaten enough, Darren wiped her lips softly with a cloth. Tevra stared up at him, her violet eyes holding a shimmer of emotion, gratitude, sadness, and something warmer, deeper. She tried again to speak, her voice a faint breeze. "Why?" "Help me." Darren's smile faded a little. He didn't answer. Right away. How could he explain the pull he had felt the moment he saw her? "Because no one deserves to be left behind," he said simply. "And because when I found you, it felt like finding a missing piece of myself." Tevra's lips trembled, and for a moment, Darren thought she might cry again. Instead, she closed her eyes and let out a tiny sigh, almost like a soft song of relief. The day passed quietly. Darren stayed by her side, reading to her from old books he kept. Stories about Earth's oceans, forests, and skies, things Tevra had never seen, but listened to with hungry eyes. Sometimes she would struggle to move her fingers, trying so hard that Darren had to gently remind her not to push herself too much. When evening fell and the stars came out, Darren opened the window a little so Tevra could feel the night air. The scent of pine and distant rain filled the room. "You know," Darren said, looking at the stars, "there's a legend that every star is a soul, a heart that shines even after it's been lost." Tevra's gaze followed his to the sky, her eyes wide and full of wonder. "Maybe," he added with a chuckle, "one of those is yours, but I'm not letting you float away just yet." A soft sound escaped Tevra, a tiny broken laugh. It was weak, but it was real. Darren's chest warmed at the sound. "You're incredible," he whispered without thinking. "Even broken, you shine." Her fingers twitched again, this time curling just the tiniest bit. It was almost nothing, but Darren saw it, and his heart leapt. "That's it," he encouraged, grinning. "You're getting stronger already." The firelight painted Tevra's face with a soft golden glow. She looked ethereal, almost too beautiful to be real. Darren found himself leaning closer without realizing it, drawn in by something deeper than words. He stopped himself just inches away, his breath mixing with hers. He didn't want to scare her, didn't want to cross a line. But Tevra, with all the strength she could muster, tilted her head just enough to rest her forehead against his. It was a small, fragile touch. But to Darren, it felt like the most powerful connection he had ever known. He closed his eyes and stayed there, feeling her heartbeat faintly through the connection. A silent promise passed between them, carried not by words, but by the simple, tender meeting of two broken souls who had found each other in a world that had forgotten them. And in that small house at the edge of the woods, surrounded by stars and sorrow, something new began to grow. Something soft and bright and fiercely alive. The days that followed became a rhythm, a gentle dance between healing and hope. Darren cared for Tevra with a devotion he hadn't known he was capable of. Every morning, he would wake early to warm the cottage, cook simple meals, and help her stretch her stiff limbs. Slowly, day by day, Tevra's body showed tiny signs of life. A finger twitch, a slight shift of her hand. He celebrated every small victory with a smile and soft words of encouragement. Tevra, in turn, responded with growing light in her eyes. She listened when he spoke, tried to smile when he joked, and sometimes, when the world outside was quiet, she would hum a strange, beautiful tune from her world. A sound so pure, it made Darren's heart ache. One evening, after a long day of slow progress, Darren sat by the window, staring at the sky. Tevra watched him quietly from the couch, her body bundled in blankets, her mind sharp and full of questions she could not yet easily ask. Finally, she whispered, "You, lonely before me?" Darren glanced at her, surprised by the soft question. He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, I guess I was. This house was too quiet for a long time. I kept telling myself I didn't mind, but..." His voice drifted as he looked back at the stars. "I think I was just waiting. For something. Someone I didn't know I needed." Tevra's cheeks flushed the faintest shade of silver blue, and she looked down at her hands, trying once again to flex her fingers. They moved a little more now, shaky but stronger. "You saved me," she said, each word slow and careful. "I owe you." Darren shook his head firmly. "You don't owe me anything, Tevra. I didn't save you because I wanted something back. I saved you because I couldn't stand the thought of you being alone out there." Silence wrapped around them, but it wasn't heavy. It was full of something new. Something soft, like the first breath of spring after a long winter. Tevra shifted a little, her legs still useless, but her arms gaining strength every day. She tried to lift one hand toward him, her fingers trembling like the fragile branch of a young tree. Darren immediately rushed to her side, gently taking her hand in his. Their fingers fit together so naturally it made his chest tighten. Her skin was cooler than his, but the connection between them was electric. "You're not alone anymore either," she whispered, her voice like a promise written in the stars. Darren brought her hand to his chest, pressing it over his heart so she could feel the strong, steady beat there. "As long as you're here," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "you'll never be alone." Tevra's violet eyes shined brightly, catching the firelight like precious gems. Her lips parted slightly, and for a long moment, neither of them moved. The world outside faded away, No past, no future, just the fierce, delicate bond growing between them. "I want," Tevra began, struggling with the words. "I want to stay. With you." Darren's heart skipped a beat. He leaned closer, brushing a few strands of silver hair from her forehead. "Then stay," he said softly. "This is your home now too, Tevra." Her lower lip trembled. Tears pooled in her eyes. But these were not the tears of pain or fear. They were tears of relief, of hope, of something that had once been broken beginning to heal. Without thinking, Darren leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, light as a feather, full of all the gentle care he had locked inside his soul for too long. Tevra closed her eyes and smiled, a real, beautiful smile that transformed her face into something radiant. That night, they fell asleep side by side, her small hand resting against his chest, his arm draped protectively around her. Outside, the stars watched in silence, bearing witness to a miracle they had seen 1,000 times before, two lonely hearts finding each other in the vast, wild universe. And deep inside the earth, where the forgotten graveyard of Tevra's people still slept, a new story began to whisper. Through the stones, a story not of death and abandonment, but of hope, healing, and a love that would not be denied. Spring arrived slowly, carrying warmth on its back and melting the last chills of winter. The forest around Darren's cottage began to bloom, colors bursting to life like a painting waking from sleep. And inside the small home, another miracle was unfolding. Tevra was healing. She could now sit up on her own, her arms strong enough to hold her weight. Her legs were slower, still stubborn, but every day she fought to move them. Darren built her special wooden crutches, shaped carefully. With his own hands, the first time she stood, even for a second, he had lifted her into the air, laughing with pure joy. "You're amazing," he had whispered, spinning her gently before settling her back on the bed. Tevra had smiled so brightly it almost hurt to look at her. The bond between them grew like a living thing. They talked for hours now, about Earth, about her world, about dreams they never dared to speak aloud before. Tevra's voice was soft but full of wonder, and every time she laughed, it felt like music born just for him. One golden evening, as the sunset bathed the world in honey-colored light, Darren set up a chair outside for her. He carried her in his arms, though she protested softly, wanting to walk. He only smiled and said, "You've already climbed mountains today. Let me spoil you a little." Tevra nestled against him once he set her down, watching the forest with wide eyes. She had never seen earth bloom before. The way the wind carried, scents of wildflowers, the way birds sang from the treetops. She leaned her head against Darren's shoulder without a word. For a long time, they just sat there, breathing together, listening to the world's heartbeat. "I never thought," Tevra whispered, her fingers curling in his sleeve, "that I would be happy again." Darren turned his head slightly, brushing his nose against her hair. "You deserve it, Tevra. You deserve so much more." She pulled back slightly, to look up at him, her violet eyes deep and searching. "Why are you so kind to me?" she asked, her voice trembling with something fragile and important. He smiled, tucking a silver strand behind her ear. "Because when I found you, Tevra, I didn't just find someone to save. I found someone who saved me too." For a moment she only stared at him, and he wondered if he had said too much. But then Tevra lifted one shaking hand and placed it on his cheek, her fingers feather-light. "I want to stay," she whispered. "Not because I owe you, not because I need saving." Her thumb brushed his skin, and he closed his eyes, feeling her touch like a prayer. "I want to stay because I love you." The world seemed to hold its breath. "Darren," opened his eyes, finding her gaze steady despite the tremble in her voice. His heart beat so hard it hurt. He cupped her face with both hands, leaning down until their foreheads touched. "I love you too, Tevra," he murmured. "More than I ever thought I could love anyone." And then, slowly, carefully, he kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of passion or desperation. It was something far deeper, a promise sealed between two souls who had been broken and healed together. Tevra melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck with surprising strength. Darren pulled her close, feeling the fragile beat of her heart against his own. The sun dipped lower, setting the world ablaze in gold and red. Around them, the forest sighed with life, the earth beneath them full of old sorrow and new beginnings. Tevra and Darren, once two lost and lonely spirits, now belonged to each other, a love born in an alien graveyard, stronger than abandonment, brighter than any star. And together, they would write a new story, not of pain or loss, but of hope, healing, and a love so rare it would live forever in the wind and the starlight.